In the name of God, we're having the honor of talking to Chris Tchaikovsky, and he's with us from Lebanon, and I hope that
Hello, Ali.
I hope that we're having a great time, and we're having to talk about the issue of Syria in this interview, which is the one of the most important issues that we have these days in the region. And there are some questions that I would ask from my friend Chris. So, uh, Chris, as the first question and as the general first question, how do you see the whole situation in Syria right now?
Well, the whole situation is getting better day after day. I mean, I don't know if we can partially contribute it to the ceasefire regime because definitely knows a lot more humanitarian access. The Russians have benefited from the ceasefire from their own side. We also focused a lot of manpower to capture Palmyra, and we were bound to reach all the way to Deir ez-Zor until we've seen the ceasefire breaches in southern Aleppo and western Aleppo. So overall, compared to last year, the situation is a lot better, but there are still many challenges, and the pace of our offensives are getting slower day after day. I don't know if it's related to ceasefire or because there's some diplomatic obstacles. I mean, Iran is a staunch supporter of Bashar al-Assad, but the Russians have a different perspective on it and seem to want to allocate more resources on capturing ISIL territories and not be too concerned with non-ISIL territories because of some diplomatic issues with the Americans. They seem to have a mutual understanding.
Mhm.
So they also try to blacklist some FSA members like Jaish al-Islam and Ahrar al-Sham. One of them admittingly used chemical weapons, so there are challenges.
Okay.
That's the best way to put it.
All right. So as we're talking about the challenges, now let's go to some details. So recently we have the issue of Khan Tuman, which brought lots of casualties to the to our side. Uh, why do you think it happened, and what was the reason behind the whole thing?
Why we lost Fantoman?
It's not about the losing Khan Tuman. Mainly it's about the whole thing. I mean, suddenly we have the breaking of the ceasefire by Jaish al-Fath. And suddenly we saw that we lost the Khantuman so somehow quickly, and I just want to know more about the reason behind that and why they do that in such a moment, in such a day. Is it connected to any other, event in the region? And what was the importance of, Khantuman itself?
Well, from what I noticed is that they've been preparing for the capture of Fantoman for many months using drones.
Hmm.
The Turkestan Islamist Party released a propaganda video showing how they marked each area precisely, and I'm sure they also had foreign intelligence help, no doubt. And basically, Iran and Hezbollah and Syrian Army and allies withheld from launching an offensive. They didn't want to spearhead an offensive. They wanted to keep the areas they already captured.
Hmm.
So the rebels opportunistically made use of that.
Hmm.
So this is partially why we lost Khartoum
So what is the
and
importance?
Khalidiyya and some other points.
Hmm. So what is the importance of the Khantuman itself? Is it, as I heard, it's the place that connects Halab to Damascus. So So is it going to be some point that is officially super important for having the control
Well,
of the region?
we must take into consideration that when Hezbollah and the Syrian army captured Khan Tuman, the areas in the north, Nubal and Zahra, were still sieged.
Hmm.
So the initial reason was to basically blockade the supply route
Hmm.
from northern Aleppo and Idlib
Hmm.
and towards Damascus. So after they blocked the area and liberated Nubal and Zahra, that the presence in the Khan Tuman became less strategically important.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, for the rebel side, capturing it had a symbolic significance more than strategic significance,
Hmm.
and they gained a lot of moral support from that.
Okay, and what is the relation between this whole operation and the attack to the hospital in Halab? So, because as you know, we had some, hospital attacks in Halab, and that was all, I guess, somehow influencing the spirits of the soldiers in the region, and especially in Khartoum. So, uh, how can you see? I mean, how can you analyze that?
The only relation I see is that they were very determined to break the ceasefire by any means necessary,
Hmm.
because they know as soon as ISIS is completely erased from the country, they're not going to have much of a leverage on the Syrian army anymore.
Hmm.
So they want the Syrian army to fight as many fronts as possible.
Mm.
So that's the connection. That's the big connection. There's this coordination between ISIS and non-ISIS terrorist groups.
And can you explain a bit about the Jaysh al-Fath? I mean, this army is somehow included under the Al-Nusra or ISIL, or is it connected to ISIS, or is it totally something independent?
Well, Jaish al-Fatah is just
Hmm.
a coalition consisting of the same groups that were already fighting near Khan Tuman, but
Hmm.
without much success. So after Jaish al-Fatah was formed, they gained a lot more success due to a presence of other FSA members.
Hmm.
It's basically composed of Western-backed Ahrar al-Sham,
Hmm.
alongside with the internationally condemned Jaish al-Nusra,
See.
and you have the FSA Sultan Murad division and other brigades with less popular names. So and they start to be mobilized more, organized.
Hmm.
They start to resume a military operations room,
Hmm.
and they also wanted to unite all the rebels in the area so they could have less infighting, as
Hmm.
we've noticed previously, in order to put pressure on Damascus.
I see. Okay, thank you. And as the last question, we recently witnessed the assassination of some of the commanders of Hezbollah, and it was something that is somehow affecting the war and the conflict in the region. So, who do you think is behind it? I mean, is it directly something that is operated by Israel or the insiders in I don't know, in Syria or in any other army who is somehow involved in the region was helping about the information or operation? So and if it is insiders, how it would affect the front of the resistance in the region?
It's not going to affect us in a significant way, because although losing him was a tragedy.
Hmm.
Um, hopefully, um,
Yeah,
some
because after losing, uh,
American
some
tribes
other commanders, the process of
and
the
other
resistance,
commanders
yeah, the
got
process
much
didn't change,
stronger.
alhamdulillah. Yes.
Every time a commander is assassinated, some analysts predict the demise of Hezbollah. But
Hmm.
each time they get stronger and stronger,
Exactly. Yeah.
and they've been getting stronger ever since the war because they've been getting a lot of support
Hmm.
from Sunnis and Shias, and they have a wider organization for martyrs and their families,
Hmm.
command tens of thousands of troops now,
Hmm.
and they also benefited from advanced weapons from Russia and Iran.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, anyone who thinks this is the end of Hezbollah is clearly wrong.
Hmm. Okay.
As
And
for as for help, whether the perpetrators were insiders and outsiders, I would say they're both.
hmm so it's
Despite,
cooperation between both, right?
yeah, I mean, there were conflicting reports, and some people had doubts about the current reports.
Hmm.
So it would be best to see them one and the same thing in the end, and
Hmm.
not get involved with semantics.
Okay. And all right. Thank you so very much for your time. It was a great interview, and
Thank you.
I hope that we will have you
Thank you, Ali.
soon again in another interview too.